this session. And let me pull up my opening PowerPoint here. So good morning and welcome to the first of our Tennessee History Day Teaching with Primary Sources summer webinar series. So our first session here is going to be focused on finding primary sources with our Teaching with Primary Sources program. But before we jump into today's content, I want to run over just a few things, kind of get you guys started here for this series. So a few housekeeping things. First, a few best practices. One, as you guys come in, you notice that your mics were muted. If you would keep them that way throughout the session, that just helps us to have clear audio for the recording because we will be posting this to our Teaching with Primary Sources YouTube page. If you have questions or you would like to ask of us, we ask that you put those in the chat box. So having your mics muted just helps us to kind of keep clear audio. If you would rename yourself over in the participants list, if you find wherever your device's name pops up, if that's not your first and last name, you can hover over that and click rename and put both your first and last name there. And again, that just helps us to respond to folks and also to keep attendance. Hannah is doing that for us this morning. As far as interactions, we do want this webinar series to be interactive, and the ways that we are going to be doing that is using, first and foremost, our chat box. So most of you at the bottom of your screen should find where you can access the chat box, and so you can bring that up. Any questions, thoughts that you have as we're going through the presentations, please feel free to put that in there. Respond to each other. We will also have members of our team responding again throughout all of these sessions. So that's a great way to kind of keep the conversation going as we're going through the content. We also, you will find that there are reaction buttons. So you'll see those at the bottom of your screen as well. You have a hands clapping or a thumbs up. Feel free to use those throughout the presentation. And you may be asked from time to time to use those in response to a question, just for us to get kind of a quick sense of where people are at on different things. And then we will be utilizing polling in some of these sessions, maybe not all of them. So you will have the polling question to pop up on your screen. You'll have a chance to answer that question, and that way it will give us a sense again to get some feedback from you guys. If you happen to be watching this later on our YouTube channel, unfortunately the polling questions don't show up on the video, but we will be reading the questions and the answer choices so that you can get a sense of what those questions are. So again, that's just kind of a few things to help us kind of manage this and make it as interactive as we can. You can follow along and find all of the resources, PowerPoints, all of those things that we're using for all of these sessions. We have a Padlet that Jennifer has started for us. You can use the QR code here to access that or the link that you see here. And all the PowerPoints, any resources that are mentioned, we will be posting that there. And that Padlet page will actually have links for all of the different sessions. So as we go through, we'll be adding to each one of those columns. So you'll see this organized by session. And as I mentioned, this is the first of a series. So we will be doing 2 of these a week for the next 3 weeks. And so if you haven't already signed up for some of the additional ones, keep in mind that this is what we have coming up. And then we'll come back to this at the end too, just as a reminder. But do keep in mind that this is one of 6 that we have that will be taking place. All right, so with that, I do want to take just a moment to introduce our team so that you'll know kind of who is responding to folks in the chat box. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. So let's start with our Teaching with Primary Sources team, who will be our presenters for today. So again, there's myself and then Stacy. So Stacy, you want to say hello?
Hello.
And then we also have with us our graduate research assistant, Layla Smallwood. So Layla, if you want to say hi.
Hi, I'm trying to troubleshoot. I'm sorry, a few people are saying they can't hear anything. Hi.
If they can't hear anything, they need to make sure that they have joined audio via either their computer or their phone. That may be the issue. And then with our Tennessee Historical Society, Tennessee History Day team, we have Jennifer Core.
Hello, everybody.
And with Jennifer, we also have Hannah. And Hannah, I don't want to like butcher your last name. So how do you pronounce your last name?
It's Zekman. That's okay. Hi, everyone.
So again, each of us are available and we'll be responding to questions throughout in the chat box. So just kind of keep that in mind. So with that, I know some of you guys are still working through your tech problems. So our folks are trying to help you with that. You might also try, if you can't hear, going out of the meeting and coming back in. Sometimes that helps too. All right, so let me get to our... So our session today is focused on finding primary sources. And of course, with our Teaching with Primary Sources program, that is sort of what we do. We find primary sources and we figure out how best to use them to meet Tennessee curriculum standards. So I know some of you may be new or unfamiliar with our program. So just real quickly, the Teaching with Primary Sources program is an education outreach program for the Library of Congress. We have been funded and have been doing this project now since 2008 and offering workshops, professional development sessions across the state. We also have a website that we'll briefly mention later in the session that has a lot of materials, again, that meet Tennessee curriculum standards and is a great place for you to find resources that you can use with your students that, again, will use as primary sources from the Library of Congress collections. Our program is actually housed out of the Center for Historic Preservation at Middle Tennessee State University. And Layla is going to be talking about some of the other projects that we do that, again, may be beneficial to you in some of the other aspects of what you're doing towards the end of the session. So what we hope to do is really promote and facilitate the use of primary sources available from the Library of Congress website. So like today's session, I'm going to be showing you how to navigate the digital collections and find how to, to get to some things very quickly, some pages and some different types of resources and guides that they have that I think are particularly helpful, especially for students conducting research projects. And then the other thing we want to do is think about how we're using primary sources in the classroom. And so with a lot of our workshops or educational materials, we really kind of dig into thinking about how we are using these in instructional purposes and how we are engaging students with the different types of primary sources. So I want to think about, one, what kinds of primary sources are available through the Library of Congress website. I'm going to show you some different things here in just a moment as you're looking through their collections. We're going to think about how to find them. So some quick tips. The Library of Congress website is a great tool, but it is a little overwhelming at times when you think about just the sheer volume of what is available through their collections. And so it's real easy for, especially students, but even, we as, educators and professionals to get real overwhelmed just with the amount of time it can take to find things. So we want to give you guys some tips for how to find things in a way that's going to be time efficient for you, because we realize that with everything going on, it's really hard to have as much time to prep for things as you might like. And then we're going to end with just a quick mention about a guide that we have that can help you think about what to do with these sources. And that's going to be particularly useful for your students who might be doing History Day projects, so that, once they find sources, they need to narrow it down and think about, what can they do with them and how can they best use the different sources that they find. So some examples of primary sources. There are all different types of sources that are out there. And in fact, I have a poll question that I want to pose to you guys. So when we think about the different types that are available, I want you to think about what is your favorite type of primary source to use with students. So you should have a question that has popped up for you there. And your answer choices, you can just pick one on this one. Pictures, maps, letters, political cartoons, newspapers, diaries, government documents, oral histories, acts of legislation, or sheet music. So again, think about, which one of these that you really like using with your students, really kind of gets them engaged. Give you guys just a few more seconds to respond to that. Looks like we've got about 13 people who haven't had a chance to answer yet. Nobody likes diaries and legislation. Can't imagine why legislation isn't up there. I mean, legalese is so fun for young students to read. All right, so we're going to go ahead and end polling, and it looks like pictures was our #1 choice, with 19 of you choosing that. Political cartoons come in second with 13, and that was the two that I figured. That's the ones that we hear most often. People love to use pictures and political cartoons, but some of you, chose maps, letters, newspapers, government documents, and oral histories. So thank you for that. So, of course, all of these different types of primary sources are available from the Library of Congress digital collections. So how do we go about finding them? Where do we go to find them? So I want to show you a few things from the Library of Congress site that I think will be particularly helpful. So we're going to start with just their homepage. So we're going to go to loc.gov. All right, can you guys see the library homepage there? All right, thanks, Stacy. So when you get to the Library of Congress homepage, they really have been working on this to make it streamlined. So you'll see that there are fewer and fewer choices now than what we used to have on the site. Still organized in much the same way, though. We see our general search box here at the top. We'll see kind of this scrolling image is going to have a lot of the things that are what's new, highlighted things, our general navigation bar here with our library catalog, our digital collections, and some of the concentrated sites kind of getting different types of people engaged with their materials. Their trending sites, so again, this is new materials that are coming up. And I noticed this morning as I was kind of reviewing what they have up on the site currently, they are working on a new app. So for your students who may be doing a lot of, virtual research this year, as they may not be able to go to, to regular libraries and archives, this may be something that's of particular interest to them, something that they can download and navigate through the library collections in a way that's going to be more mobile device friendly. So keep an eye out on that new app that they are developing. And again, you'll see some information about, visiting the library. And then they have this great section here that they're constantly changing out kind of in time with whatever's happening in the world. And so, of course, right now, just coming off the 4th of July holiday, you'll see that there are sources related to celebrating the 4th of July. So finding the primary sources, because we mentioned, of course, the Library of Congress, has an amazing collection, and a lot of those collections have been digitized. And in fact, if you visit the digital collections page, you'll note that there are 429 digital collections available. So again, that's an amazing amount of material. So how do we go about actually navigating to find information through this, large number of digital collections? The best way to do that is really by using this search box that's here at the top that you can access on really any other pages in that header that they have up there. And so what you'll want to do is have either you or your students think about, again, your search terms. So, we want to start with the sample term since we began the session with listening from a song from Hamilton. Let's see what they have related to Alexander Hamilton within the library's collections. Wait, actually, and I'm going to change this from digital collections to everything. Oh. All right, there we go. Yeah, so sometimes when you get that technical difficulties, just go ahead and refresh it or try it again. Sometimes they have little glitches in their system. It happens. So I would just try it again. So you'll note here as we've done this, we have 128,000 items that pop up in this. And so again, that is a lot of stuff, but the library does a good job of prioritizing what is coming through within those search results. So usually you're going to have some of the best stuff, again, towards the top of the search results list. So of course, the first thing we're going to see is collections, and they do have the Alexander Hamilton papers. One thing that I want to point out about these collection homepages, One is they're going to have a good description of just kind of an overview of the collection. So what's in this collection? What am I looking for if I'm seeing this? And so they'll have that here and some text that will tell us that. You'll note that there are some teaching resources over here to the left. This is going to be really good for you. And so you'll see some things there that may be helpful. You'll also note here at the top this featured content. And so they're going to pull out some things that they think are particularly cool in this collection to share with you. Now, I will tell you that it looks like within the Hamilton papers, they have not digitized, or I'm sorry, not transcribed a lot of his written records. And so, unfortunately, unless you want to read the cursive writing, there's, that's kind of how, this is what you're going to get. There's no transcription. So that does happen with some of these, and so you just kind of have to navigate and figure out what has been transcribed, what hasn't. And sometimes some of it is very readable, so I definitely would try to take a chance at reading it, although for our students who may not read cursive, that may be a particular challenge that you need to work around. You'll also note here under articles and essays, this is one reason I like these collection homepages, because these sections sometimes can have some great secondary source information and some great supporting materials that will be helpful. So you'll note here we have a timeline of Hamilton's life that can be particularly helpful for for you or your students. So that's a great resource that you might want to utilize. So let's see what else we have within that search results page. All right, so that was the first one. The next thing you'll note are these research guides. And this is actually, I don't know why it pops up twice because it's the same information on both of these. I love these research guides. And again, if you have students who are starting a project, if they can find one of these, this is a great way to kind of launch them into the sources that are available through the Library of Congress. So you'll see a general introduction, and again, you'll have a couple of sample sources here. And then you'll note that there are digital collections, related online resources, external websites, and some print resources. So with the digital collections, what it's going to do is basically pull out what particular collections they have that relate to whatever the resource guide is on. So again, this time it's Hamilton. So again, we have the Hamilton papers that we just looked at. And you will note that they pulled out some specific sources here that they think are really cool. So you can find those and look at those. Again, it's going to be a real good helpful to find the best things. The next thing you're going to note are the Congressional Publications that they have there. So what you're going to find here, again, is going to be some things you're going to see a little description beside them telling you kind of what it is that you're looking at. There is going to be the American State Papers that are also referenced here, the George Washington Papers. And so again, when thinking about trying to find prints, like the text sources, the handwritten things, and see if they're transcribed, it's worth looking at the different collections because the library has transcribed some, while not all of their paper collections. So with this one, we can look and we see that actually this is a collection that they have transcribed some of these. And so we'll see the actual document over here on the right and the transcription for that over here on the left. And so again, that is going to make it much more user-friendly for our students. And so we can actually read through this particular letter. You'll see historic newspapers. And again, they've pulled out a couple of articles from some of these papers here. The James Madison papers, which unfortunately are also not transcribed, printed ephemera. And so this is going to be, different posters, notices, those kind of things that were printed during the time period. And so again, there's going to be some good stuff here we could look at. And then under rare books, we'll see that there's actually 2 early additions to the Federalist. And so we could actually look through and read those essays here. So we'll see that. They have it that way. You can also, of course, download the PDF for these. It's going to be the entire document. So that's another option. All right, let's see. Go away, little bar. Sorry, the toolbar pops down sometimes and it blocks my tabs. All right, and then lastly, they have the Thomas Jefferson papers here, which also have some different letters. Under related online resources, you'll see things related to America's Library, Congress.gov, exhibitions, those types of pages. And again, so some other great materials that the library has that can be found in different places. And then lastly, some external websites. And so this is going to be some good suggestions for other reputable sites that you can find good information on. So you'll see there's several different ones on American Experience, Founders Online. So again, some other really good places that you can find information for. So again, this is why these research guides are such a great resource when you can find them. So I definitely would recommend taking a look at those if you see one pop up. All right. So going back to our search results. So after you've kind of noticed those things towards the tops of your list, also after that, think about how you can narrow down the other things. So think about what type of format that you are looking for. So you can actually, you know, it's just like if we're looking for photos, for example, we can pull out the photos of Hamilton. So that gives us a way to just look for those. And you can, again, do that with different types of things here. And we can, of course, then go back to show us our full list. So legislation, personal narratives, maps, you know, different things like that we can narrow down to. The other way that I like to narrow things down by is by date. And so, you know, if we wanted to look at things from the Revolutionary War period, we could go to 1700s. Then we could either look here at this first decade, 1770, 1779, or 1780 to 1789. And so that's going to, again, give us a lot of good materials, again, related to that period in his life. So, you know, that is the ways that we have found that is kind of quickest and easiest to go through and use these digital collections. The other thing that I would recommend as you're thinking about just doing a general search through the entirety of the library's collections is think about how you are constructing your search terms. So with Alexander Hamilton, again, we have one person, but we're going to be looking at things related to his entire life. But if we wanted to think about, you know, students who are maybe doing a project on you know, another broad topic, so say like Civil War, you know, here we get 300,000 items that pop up. So the Civil War, of course, is a very broad topic. The Library of Congress has a ton of materials on the Civil War. So you really want to encourage your students as they are searching through digital collections to be as specific as they can be. And this is where it's great to actually have them start the process by looking at some good secondary sources and pulling in and kind of creating a list of possible search terms. So again, thinking about specific people, if there is a specific, you know, place that they're looking for, a specific battle, anything like that. So there's as specific as they can be within looking through your digital collections, they're going to find better materials. And they're not going to be as overwhelmed. If you're doing a broad search, you're going to get, again, hundreds of thousands of items, and it's going to be really easy to get overwhelmed by what is available.
Yep.
All right, so with that, so that's kind of a few things to think about when using the digital collections. And like I said, with the way the library has updated it, using their search bar here has made it much easier to access and to get into the digital collections. A couple other things that I want to point out. One is Chronicling America. And so this is a site that is likely going to be changing. We've noticed that there are some beta pages that they are working, I think, to actually integrate this into the general searching function on the library site. As of right now, it still appears that the only way to access things in the newspaper collections is to actually go to this page and use their search function here. But again, it looks like we've seen some beta pages that are popping up that I think that they're trying to integrate this into the general search function. So that may be something that changes over the course of the next few months. So we'll just kind of keep an eye out and see what happens there as they are constantly updating the site. And you can, you know, find newspapers here from across the country dating from the year 1789 to 1963. I always like to start by looking at the recommended topics. And so you can see that over here on the left. And that recommended topics list, again, you get an alphabetical list, subject or dates. So we'll just look at the alphabetical list here. And so what they've done is they pulled out some topics, and then what you'll find is they have pulled in some, they'll have a little timeline, but then they'll have, let's see, here we are. They've changed some of this. So you'll have that introduction, and then search strategies and selected articles. So they'll give you some sample terms that you could use to search the overall collections, and then they will have these selected articles available. And so this is a great way, again, to get at some materials without having to do a ton of searching on your own. So definitely take a look at those recommended topics listings. If you do want to do searching on your own, again, you want to think about how things were talked about at the time. What was the terminology used? And then you can get into this advanced search function here where you can narrow it down by state, by specific newspaper, by your years, date ranges, and then you can do different types of searching. So any words, all words, phrases. So it's a really good way. And what it will do is it will actually highlight within the different newspaper pages where your terms are popping up. So there's some great stuff in the newspapers. They've been working to add things. Tennessee has got a great representation of papers on this specific, within the specific collection. So I definitely would recommend taking a look at that, especially if you have students who are doing local history topics. Again, it's a great, great collection to make use of. If you are doing projects related to any of the wars that the U.S. has been involved in, especially in the 20th century, I would take a look at the Veterans History Project. And so this is another collection that doesn't always kind of pop up in regular searching through the digital collections, but you can come here to this page, loc.gov/vets, and do search the veterans collections. You can then select what conflict that you're looking at. Then you can, if you want to pick a specific branch of the service, you can do the gender of the person that you're looking for. Were they a prisoner of war? You do want to make sure that you're clicking on digitized collection, so that way it is one that they've actually already got the, whether it's a transcription of the oral history interview or the actual video of it, or an audio recording of it. And then sometimes they will have additional material. So they might have photographs, they might have letters, diaries, you know, different things. And so you can see, you can click on those too. That way you can pull in some of those. And there's some really interesting stuff. I know, especially with the Vietnam War veterans, there's some really great materials in those that you can find. So this is a really cool thing to kind of make use of and explore. All right, and the last thing that I want to talk about as far as things to access at the library site are their exhibitions. And this is a really good thing for students because, one, it highlights some great sources, but then it also will give you some good contextual information because you actually will get the text from the exhibits. So this is one that the library currently has up, the Shall Not Be Denied, Women Fight for the Vote, regarding women's suffrage. And you can explore the exhibit. And what it will do is actually take you through the exhibit items. So we actually see the text from the exhibit itself. And then we'll see the items that are on display. We can click on those. And again, it's going to give us that information. We can expand these and see them in a bit larger format. So again, it's a lot of good material here. The other thing that's really cool with some of the ones I've done in the last few years is they've started trying to make the multimedia pieces that the library has developed for those available online as well. So this one actually has this video that you could use with your students that's actually in that exhibit. So that's available online as well. Depending on the age of the exhibit that you're looking at, some of the older ones, of course, their web pages are gonna look a little differently. But all of them, again, have great sources that are highlighted and some great contextual information. And especially if you have students who may be interested in doing a website for their History Day project, this will give them a good model to follow, thinking about, again, how much text is being used to kind of build the narrative that's, the framing for that exhibit item. So again, it's just a really good example for them to use. The last thing I want to point out to you guys is this crowdsourcing project that the library's been doing called By the People. So, as I mentioned early on with the Hamilton papers, for example, they are not transcribed. The library has a lot of collections that are like that, some really great materials, but because they're not transcribed, it does make them a little more difficult to use in a student setting. And they're trying to do this project now where they're actually crowdsourcing the transcription. So you can actually volunteer to go in and you can transcribe it, you can tag it, or you can review it. And they actually have information here too about how teachers can participate. So for, let's see, I think that is under about, no, sorry guys. Remember where I saw that this morning. So they have some different ones that they are currently working on here under the campaigns. It was under resources. Yeah, here it is. So, you know, if you're an educator who would like to possibly do this with your class and have them work on a transcription, they have information here under resources about how to do that. And so again, this is a really cool project that they're doing that is going to make a lot of these collections much more accessible a lot quicker than they would otherwise. So I would definitely take a look at this if that's something that you're interested in, and especially for those of you maybe who are working with high school students. And not all of them are handwritten. So some of these, for example, in the Lomax papers are things that are, you know, that are printed sources, but they're still trying to do transcriptions of them just to have those up too. So even if your students can't read cursive handwriting, there are still ways that they can participate in this. All right, so with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and turn things over to my colleague, Stacy, who's going to talk about some collections for finding world history materials.
All right. Thank you, Kira. I am going to share my screen. Okay, so everybody should be seeing the main Library of Congress page again, because I know that many of you are looking for world history lesson plans and primary sources, and of course the Library of Congress isn't as strong in providing those things as it is for US history stuff, for very obvious reasons because of the actual federal purview of the Library of Congress to begin with. But I just want to show you real quick at the beginning where you can go to find some of these things at the Library of Congress itself. So from the main page, you go to this link here for digital collections, and then you can also filter out collections like you can search results over here on the left. And so if you just go to the World Cultures and History subject, that'll narrow it down to, of course, 99 still collections. But all of these, they may not be exclusively in world history. It may be that some of these collections have some world history sources as well as some American history sources, but some of them are definitely all world history sources. A lot of them are photographs that were taken later in different parts of the world or different web archives. There are some manuscript collections. The web archives are archived websites that don't really exist anymore, so they may not be as helpful to your students. But again, there are some helpful things here that you can go through and, you know, find something out of the 99 collections. We're going to be doing a webinar for our Using Maps newsletter in which we look at some world history maps. So that's one of these collections in here. Okay, now, Kira, I want to go back to the PowerPoint for a second. Could you go back to the PowerPoint for a second, Kira? I just want to go really quickly through the 4 slides, and then I'm going to show the websites, because going back and forth between PowerPoints and websites is kind of difficult through Zoom. So I just want to show you very briefly that out of all the different websites that I've perused looking for world history stuff, I've narrowed down some that I thought would be most useful. And so these are the ones that I'm going to show you today. So basically, if you're looking for lesson plans on world history, I'm going to be showing you Reading Like a Historian from Stanford, the History Teaching Institute from The Ohio State, and then a couple sites from the Center for History and New Media. Next slide. And then if you're looking for actual primary source images having to do with world history, you can find them at these 3 example websites. We're going to look at the World Digital Library, And then 2 examples of art museums that have good stuff online, the British Museum and the Met. Next slide. Okay, and then if you're looking for primary source texts, we're gonna look at these 3 places: the Internet History Sourcebooks, which is where I always go, the Eyewitness History site, and then the Avalon Project, which is from Yale. All right, and then the last slide I wanna show you, okay, then if you want videos that you can show your students to provide some contextual information, Crash Course World History, of course, you may already be familiar with, my favorite, and then there's some at the History Channel as well. Yes, for World History. Okay, so thanks, Kira. I'm gonna go back to sharing you my screen, and basically I'm gonna work my way through each of those websites pretty quickly. So the first one I was gonna show you was Reading Like a Historian. This is part of the Stanford History Education Group. They are another Teaching with Primary Sources partner. We've worked with them in the past, but their website is really good. You may already be familiar. The thing is, if you just have to create an account. It doesn't cost any money. You just register and get a login and password, and that's how you access the actual lesson plan materials themselves. But you can browse before you create an account. So you can see that if you just click topic World History, they have 49 different lesson plans. And even if you're just looking for primary sources and not lesson plans, like your students might be, you can find primary sources in the lesson plans themselves. So remind your students of that yeah, they're not teachers, they're not looking for lesson plans, but if they're looking for primary sources on Hammurabi's code, they can get it from the lesson plan itself. So this is just kind of a brief overview of some of the things that they have. Lots of different time periods, etc. And they do a good job of excerpting text documents, and they're pretty user-friendly and easy to follow. So here's where you can download all the different materials. They have a lot of graphic organizers, which are good too. And then you can see, just register, you can access that. So that's SHEG, Stanford History Education Group, Reading Like a Historian. They also have other parts of their website too that are good to check out. And the next one, the History Teaching Institute at The Ohio State. This is when they have history teachers come and do institutes the way that we do. And so those history teachers create lesson plans as part of those institutes, and they put them on this site. So you get a lot of variety in terms of like how complete some of the stuff is on here. But it's in a lot of different categories, as you can see. So they have like Central Asia in world history. They have European history. They have different categories. So for example, if we go to the scientific revolution, just pick an example. And then this one's for grade 5. And then some of them are on the website itself and look like this and actually have a good template, and all the links are built in and pretty easy to follow to get to things. Some of them will take you to a PDF that may or may not be as complete. You know how it is when you go to a workshop and you start a lesson plan and you don't quite finish. So I have a feeling that's what happened too. But this is actually a pretty good site. They have good teaching resources through their university site, period. So that's one of those links there that you want to check out. Now, these 2 sites, this one and then the Women in World History from the Roy Rosenzweig Center for History and New Media, they're kind of older sites, but they have such great stuff on them. And these are created by scholars and by teachers. So, they've got links that you can go to find world history sources. This Unpacking Evidence are guides about what the benefits are for different formats of primary sources. So for example, if you go to maps, here you have a teacher talking about why it's important to use maps. And what can maps tell us? How do I read a map? it's just good stuff. And then like under resources, there's like, you be a historian, and these are actually for your students to actually do themselves instead of for you. So it's like, okay, what is this? Oh, what is this map element, etc. So it is kind of, it has some interactive components to it. And so that's under the unpacking evidence. The analyzing documents, this one has some really good stuff too. The problem with this is, remember how I said it was an old website? It uses Flash. So if you don't have Adobe Flash, you can try to install it, but I know a lot of computers aren't even really entertaining Adobe Flash anymore. So, basically you have a scholar explaining all these things in just really wonderful ways, but you got to set up the technology in order to be able to get to that. But there's also a transcript too, so you can get what they're saying, even if you can't get the Adobe Flash player to work. But that's under analyzing documents. And then you have teaching sources. So for example, if I want to go to Hammurabi's code, you can do a print-friendly version, or it's basically like just a lesson plan setup, and then they have links to what you're going to need. But unfortunately, you can see right there that sometimes they're a bit out of date, but then you can see this is from wsu.edu. Usually I just kind of Google Washington State University Hammurabi's code, and you can usually get it that way. But so but they still have so much good stuff, especially in terms of strategies for explaining the significance of these different formats. And so it's the exact same thing for the Women in World History site. And so you can just kind of, in a way, it's like a lot. It's like almost too much, but so many good things. And they just kind of, the case studies are my favorite because they do some focus and explanation. So that's really good. And it's really vetted. So these are really good places that are like legitimate sources that you would feel comfortable putting your students in front of. All right, so the next one I want to show you is the World Digital Library, which many of you are already familiar with. This is a partnership project of a lot of different educational and institutional organizations across the whole world. And the Library of Congress is one of the major partners, as you can see up here. So this is why the Library of Congress has a lot of links to things in the World Digital Library, even though those specific primary sources might be held in a different partnering organization or institution someplace else. So, and it's all world history stuff. So I like to go to the interactive map, and it has different themes. So I'm just gonna go to the world history interactive map. So you can just pick what part of the world you wanna look for sources in. I'm gonna zoom in to the Middle East here and say, okay, what's over here in Syria? And then, oh, come on, why are you not? All right, Syrian Arab Republic. And so if you click on that, you're gonna get 156 results, all from that part of the world. And so you can see your filters set up here. And they have another, just like the Library of Congress, they have really good filters set up on the left-hand side where you can choose what time period you wanna zoom in on, and topic and additional subjects and that kind of thing. And so you can see some of these are indeed from the Library of Congress. Look at these. Wow, that's a lot of them actually. But this is from Qatar National Library. But anyway, if you click on it, they have really nice bibliographic pages that have a good kind of contextual blurb, and then all of the information that you're going to need for cross-reference and some like similar items kind of thing. You can also explore by, let's say, time period. And so if you're doing ancient history, this is a really good way to narrow down those sources and, look at this fantastic Greek papyrus fragment, which is the kind of thing I would like. So, so yeah, that's the World Digital Library. All right, and next I'm going to show you how this is actually a side effect, a little bit of the quarantine situation, because a lot of museums realized they couldn't have visitors anymore, and so they had to put more stuff up on their websites, and that will benefit you. So this is a blog on how to explore the British Museum from home, and I found that this was actually the best guide for finding stuff on their website, because their website is great, but it can be a little hard to navigate. So you can actually, you know, do Google Street View inside the museum. And then they have all of these virtual galleries, and then they have podcasts and like Kids Place and that kind of thing. But if you go to like the galleries, this is where you can narrow down by the specific part of the world that you want to look at. So there we go. So I just have to zoom up. So like Japan, Cyprus, you know, the Etruscans, you know, lots of Egypt because colonialism, and just like the most amazing things. Sutton Hoo, fine, of course. Oh, the Lewis Chessmen, oh, my favorite thing. Return them to Scotland. But anyway, so just all of these things will take you, and you can go to the room itself and take a virtual tour of the room, and then there'll be a highlighted source or two from each of these things that's kind of like, here's a snapshot of this particular moment in time, and there we go. All right, well, sometimes it'll take you to a page that won't blink away. So that's a lot of fun, but so going to it through those kind of virtual gallery things is a good way to approach the British Museum. And then of course they have online resources, audio tours, and other kinds of things as well for like kids and visitors and that kind of thing. So, all right. And then the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York has a lot of stuff from all over the world. And I like to just go to collection highlights, and basically you can just get a snapshot of world history through objects right here. It's great for introducing students to the concept of material culture and how these are primary sources the same way as a document or a photograph is. And so like for instance, you go to this marble portrait bust of Gaius Caligula, one of the Julio-Claudian Roman emperors, and you can see all the way around his head. So you really get a good, as if you were there and you were just examining him from every single angle. And then you can also listen to them talking about it. And they have this really cool timeline of art history also. The Heilbronn timeline of art history, which is good for thinking of each of these things in the context of world history. So that's another good like kind of sub portion of their website. All right, and now I'm going to move to the slide that was talking about primary source texts from world history sources. And the one that I always, this is the one I used in graduate school. So it's an older website again, which means some of the links might be broken because it was just one guy like updating it for decades, and I don't think he can handle it anymore. But they have them for like, you know, ancient history source book if you want to find Greek sources, you know, and basically like, okay, Persian Wars, of course, Herodotus, you know, the histories of Herodotus, and then they'll shoot you in a lot of cases to a different website where you can find those books. But sometimes they'll actually have the excerpts themselves. So for instance, if I go to like medieval history source book, gonna go to, oh, I don't know, we'll go to social history for fun. Decrees on sale of unfree Christians. And so this is how you can get just like an excerpted text within their website. So you can see it's a really good short, brief length that's perfect for like your middle school and high school students, and you can always copy and paste it. So really good place to just find tons and tons of this kind of thing that are, a lot of these are, you know, they're diverse, and some of them are a little bit on the obscure side, meaning you would never find them in your textbooks or primary source readers. So it's good stuff. And then of course they, you know, they have African, East Asian, global, Indian, Islamic, Jewish, lesbian and gay, science, and women's. So they have these all sorts of new topics they keep adding. So that's, yeah, through Fordham University Internet History Sourcebooks. This is a bit more user-friendly, and you can tell this site is a little less academic, of course, because it's got your advertisements and that kind of thing. But what I like about this is they give you a nice little bit of context with a nice little excerpt of a primary source, and it's a little bit easier to browse. So for example, if I want to go to the ancient world, and I want to read about Nero persecuting the Christians, it's always a good read. So one thing that you do need to warn your students about is they might think that the primary source starts here. No, this is the editor's introduction. So you need to make sure that they know that the primary source itself does not start until after you read something like the following account was written by Tacitus, and then this is it. So that's the actual primary source, and this is your editorial introduction, which gives you a good little amount of context. So it's useful, definitely useful, but you don't want your students quoting from this as if Tacitus wrote it. So that's just the only thing to make sure that they keep in mind. But they have tons of different really good choices. You know, here's something about the Druids, and then they have a little, this is how you cite this when you use it in a paper, which is always helpful. All right, so now I am, excuse me for a second, I'm losing my ability to reach some of these links here, because the share bar is going away. Okay, so the last page of primary source text I want to show you is the Avalon project through Yale, because this has just amazing stuff. And so it's very straightforward. It's not really excerpted very shortly. Sometimes it's got really long stuff, so you would have to excerpt it. But it's just, you know, really easy to use, easy to get to these things, and all sorts of really important documents. It's through their law, history, and diplomacy library, but it's great for that. And then just to show you real fast, Crash Course, of course, you can go to YouTube, search Crash Course, subscribe to their channel, but I find that this page through PBS Learning Media is a really good way to peruse what they have. I use this, I love John Green. I use excerpts from this when I'm teaching. And then the history channel, which I can't get to because it's blocked, like this, the share screen bar is blocked, but it also kind of, they did this history at home thing, where you can find some world history sprinkled in there with all the American history. So I'm going to turn this back over to Kira, and if you have any questions, you can ask me in chat.
All right, thank you. So in the interest of time, I know we're running a few minutes long here. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Layla, and then we'll come back and wrap up.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. On that one. All right, great. So if you can see my screen, thumbs up, we're good. Awesome. Okay, so I'm just gonna walk you through a few of our partner resources that you can use to get resources for your classroom, primary sources, and just show you kind of where some lesson plans and other educational tools are available to you. So this is our first partner. It's the Center for Historic Preservation, MTSU Center for Historic Preservation. There are a lot of different parts of the Center for Historic Preservation. A lot of different things fall under the umbrella that is the Center for Historic Preservation. You have the Heritage Center, which for our local people is a fantastic resource. It's a visitor orientation center that tells Rutherford County's most powerful and compelling stories through permanent and temporary exhibits. We also offer the Tennessee Century Farm program through this, and this is started in 1985, and it's a program that honors the dedication and contributions of families who have owned and farmed the same land for at least 100 years. That might be a great resource to look at that database when doing local history. And we also have the Tennessee Civil War National Heritage Area. This is under the umbrella of the Center for Historic Preservation as well. This branch of the center also offers educational resources, including lesson plans for teaching the Civil War in Tennessee. So a lot of great resources through MTSU's Center for Historic Preservation. I'm gonna also show you guys TSLA. I'm sure everybody's pretty familiar with this. So in TSLA, I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna go to their Education Outreach tab. And then I'm gonna go to At Home Learning, this tab over here. So one thing that I think is really great, and these are all listed, I have a PDF for you guys to go and get these resources later on, available through the Padlet. So I have these daily primary source activities through TSLA that I've highlighted. These are fantastic. Here you're gonna find primary source activities for students learning at home. Each week during the school year, TSLA, excuse me, adds 5 new primary sources and activities to explore. So the posts include questions for students to research and answer, and short activities to help your students engage with social studies content while studying at home. So a lot of you said you use political cartoons, things like that. So these are great primary sources to use, available through TSLA, and hopefully they'll start this back up once we get back into the classroom. Or if we're doing digital learning, they'll offer it once the school year starts. Another great thing through TSLA is their docs boxes. That's a tongue twister. TSLA offers docs boxes. It's a program to Tennessee schools in all 95 counties. These they have 7 docs boxes, and they range from like all of the wars up until the Roaring 20s. So they examine social and economic features. Each box includes creative and unique lesson plans created by current classroom teachers, as well as the materials needed for the different activities. So they have their available docs boxes over here. And if you're interested in these, you might want to book them ahead of time, because I'm sure they book up very quickly. Another partner I wanted to feature is the Tennessee State Museum. They just opened up on July 1st again, so go visit them. The State Museum has a lot of options for digital learning as well. Under the Education tab, you'll see this digital learning piece. These options and these activities range from mystery artifacts to push students to inquiry, to Skyping mystery figures to enhance students' geographical awareness. So they have mystery artifacts, all different types of artifacts they would pull out of a bag, and a mystery person would Skype with you. Interviews with historical figures, mystery Skypes, where again, they have to figure out where this person who's Skyping them is actually from, what their geographic location is. They also offer the Traveling Trunk program, which is great if you haven't used it yet, and that's under the Education tab as well. So much like the docs boxes from TSLA, the Traveling Trunks bring Tennessee's to life in your classroom. This educational outreach program was developed by the Tennessee State Museum, and it provides teachers with hands-on materials that will connect students to Tennessee history and culture in an engaging way, just not looking at a document. You're actually looking at the artifacts. So these are filled with real and reproduction artifacts, portraits, paintings, books, music, CDs, DVDs, so much. And the trunks allow teachers to tap into new and creative ways to engage their students. And these trunks, like TSLA's docs boxes, book very quickly. So make sure that if you want these, you get on the list. There's information on how to request a trunk under the Traveling Trunk tab there. The Tennessee Historical Society, I'm gonna do this very briefly because I'm sure Hannah and Jennifer will tell us more about this next week. So I'm just gonna show you guys really quickly the Tennessee Historical Society's featured item. My computer will load. So the featured item I wanna show you guys can go here too and see if this will work. There we go. Is featured on here is Eliza Allen's guitar. This is belonged to Eliza Allen from Sumner County. She was the bride of Sam Houston. This object is a prized item in the collection of the Tennessee Historical Society. So the story of Eliza and Sam Houston's fateful marriage is on the journal page, which is also offered in this Explore tab right here. 1796, a journal of Tennessee history. And past featured items can be found on this tab down here as well. And I've linked these as well in the PDF. And you have a ton of options here to search through and look at their featured items of the Tennessee Historical Society. So Jennifer and Hannah, I'm sure will share more of the Tennessee Historical Society's available resources when they present next week. But I also did want to bring y'all's attention to the Tennessee Encyclopedia down here. So the Tennessee Encyclopedia of History and Culture is a free online reference source from the Tennessee Historical Society. So unlike crowdsourced sites like Wikipedia, with anonymous contributors and often suspect content, the Tennessee Encyclopedia entries are reviewed by Editor-in-Chief and State Historian Dr. Carol Van West, and the authors of the entries are identified. So if you want more primary sources or research, you can reach out to the authors. The Tennessee Encyclopedia first appeared in print in 1998 and has been online since 2002. So look for updated entries and content with the Tennessee Encyclopedia. There's also a search bar here if you want to find something specific. The East Tennessee Historical Society is one of the last things I'm going to show you guys. They have student programming. This is in Knoxville. The East Tennessee Historical Society provides a variety of options for museum and outreach programs. I'm going to show you guys the student programming right here. All student programs are literacy-based and correlate to current social studies standards and adjusted to accommodate grade levels. So they have a ton of different student programming here that would include primary sources, and you would just reach out to the Historical Society and Museum to get more information. They also offer in this education tab teacher resources, which are lesson plans that are made through the annual Summer Teachers of History seminars and workshops. It's an opportunity for teachers to create lesson plans, and then they're made available for you guys on this website. Another thing I want to show you guys is the museum, the current exhibits, upcoming and past exhibits tab here. You can go through and see all of these exhibits that they've had featured and get primary sources and resources for your classroom through there. All right, and the last thing I want to show you guys is the Black Craftspeople Digital Archive. So this is also linked in the PDF file that you'll see in the Padlet. So this was founded in 2019. The Black Craftspeople Digital Archive brings together scholars, students, museum, and archives professionals, and the public. So it's a crowdsourcing thing as well to collaborate and spread the story of Black craftspeople. This is a digital archive that was originally founded by Dr. Tiffany Moman. So this project, started by Dr. Tiffany Moman in fall 2019, expanded quickly to include more Black craftspeople involved in Charleston in a variety of trades. The archive is continuing to grow daily, and their site, it's functional right now, but it'll be fully functional and launched in just a little over 3.5 weeks. And they have an archive here that will be fully functional in 3.5 weeks that you can click on and search through. So very helpful if you're looking for material culture pieces to use in your classroom with your students. So I think that was just like a crash course of everything that our partners, not everything, but a few things our partners offer. And those will all be linked into the PDF that's available on the Padlet as well. And I'm going to turn this back over to Kira.
All right. Thank you, Layla. So just a couple things to wrap us up. One, I want you guys to remember that the site we haven't looked at, of course, our TPS MTSU site has a ton of great materials. So I definitely would suggest taking a look at that, and we'll have that linked into the Padlet. So again, if you're not familiar with our website, definitely take some time to look at it. Also, let's see, I want to just, on the PowerPoint that's within the that's on that Padlet. There's a couple slides that we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about, but definitely something you might want to talk with your students about is selecting primary sources and some things to consider. So that is there for you to take a look at, again, in that PowerPoint, and you can work through these with your students. And also, as you are getting ready and preparing for this new school year to start, thinking about both History Day projects, but even just what you're doing within your typical curriculum. Keep in mind that Stacy and I and Layla are all excited to help you navigate and find primary sources from these different places. So feel free to reach out to us. You can email us. We have a Facebook page that you can contact us through there, and we also post new content on that page as well. But we're happy to help you. That's really kind of what our purpose is to make finding and using these things a little more easy. So to wrap us up, let's see. Again, just want to remind you that this is the first of 6 of these sessions. So definitely keep in mind that there are others we hope that you will join us for. And also remember, again, that Padlet, we've mentioned it a few times. Definitely take a moment to look at that. You can access the links for all of the things that we've shared today, as well as things that we'll be posting for the subsequent sessions. And then finally, to get your participation certificate for joining us today, we do have a short survey for you to complete. And I believe Jennifer, someone's going to drop the link for this into the chat box so you guys can go ahead and access that. Jennifer will be emailing you a certificate for your participation for each webinar that you attend in this series. So you will note as you are filling out that survey, again, it's going to be the same one for each one. So you may have some repeat information that you'll be adding in there, but again, we do need a survey for each of the webinars that you attend. That's going to help us to track who's attended what, get you your participation certificates, and then for those of you who attend all 6 of the webinars live with us, you will be eligible for the stipend at the conclusion of the webinar series. And again, we will be posting the video for today on our TPS MTSU YouTube channel. Jennifer will be sending out the link for that later on. I hope to get that up later today. And we encourage you to share the links for these videos and for the Padlet and all these resources with your colleagues. So again, if there's something you think will be helpful for them, definitely take a moment to share that with them. So at this point, if there are, Jennifer, did you have anything to add?
We have 2 people who called in, and so I can't see your names. I just see a phone number for you. So if you all could just unmute yourselves and tell me who you are, because we had like 80 people register and 60 people show up, and I don't want to be sending emails to people who didn't come.
Barbara Warren Bobo, hyphenated.
Okay, I see you. I've got
Okay, thank you.
yours is your phone is named. I see 2 people who are 615.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. Where are you? Okay, 615-904-5448. I need to know who you are. And 615-293-0239, if you could tell me who you are. And otherwise, I think we're done. Just please fill out the survey today. Because I'm going to remove the first option before we start our session tomorrow. So we hope to see you all tomorrow for teaching with virtual strategies.
Yeah, and we will stay on the recording for just a moment. That way, if anybody has any questions or problems, we'll be here to help you. But I'm going to end our recording now.